And it came to pass the day after that he went into a city called Nain, and many of his disciples went with him, and much people. Now when he came nigh to the gate of the city, behold, there was a dead man carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow, and much people of the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her, and said unto her, Weep not. And he came and touched the bier, and they that bare him stood still. And he said, Arise. He said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise. Verse 15, and he that was dead sat up and began to speak, and he delivered him to his mother. And verse 16 says, And there came a fear on all, and they glorified God, saying that a great prophet is risen up among us, and that God hath visited his people. When I look at this passage, I came away with three things. First, that Jesus comes to the city. Second, he feels. And the third, he conquers. When Jesus comes to the city, he's just not coming to the city having done nothing. In fact, several verses before, Jesus had just came from Capernaum. And you know the story. The Roman centurion had a servant. And he had so much faith that he said, Lord, I know that you can do anything. Just say a word. And Jesus was remarked by his faith. And so he said a word. And so after doing that, Capernaum is now some 20 plus miles away from Nain. The Bible says that there was a crowd following him. And this crowd, I can imagine, was probably interested in finding out just what is Jesus going to do next. If he can heal somebody, not even being in the same place, what else could he do? And so there was a crowd with Jesus going to Nain. But it contrasted with the crowd that was leaving Nain. You see, they buried their bodies in the Jewish custom, not within the city, but outside the city. And they had to go a ways away to bury this body. So imagine a young man's body on a stretcher with the sorrow and the crying going on. They're leaving the city. They're so enraptured, so engulfed in their pain and their grief that they don't even realize that Jesus is there. Because when Jesus comes, you've got to recognize who he is. This is the pain and this is the suffering that is going on in this city at this time. But the other thing that I like about this story is that not only is Jesus there in the city, he feels the pain. You see, you have to understand that when Luke describes Jesus and he describes the situation, he doesn't describe the situation as if it was some type of painting looking away. He describes it as if he was there watching this happen. You have to understand that with Jesus, he just doesn't just watch a situation, but he experiences the situation. Oh, I can imagine the pain that this woman was feeling, the sobbing, the sorrow within this city. I'm talking about a woman who realizes that her only son is dead. Her only means of financial security is gone. Her only friend possibly is missing. She would never get the opportunity to watch him grow up. She would not have the opportunity to tuck him in at night, to kiss his lips and tell him how much she loves him. She would not have that opportunity to tell him a little joke and to watch him laugh. The pain for her was so intense that I can imagine the weeping that was going on. Not just tears when you stub your toe, but tears that come from deep down inside. I'm talking about a sorrow that only a mother can understand and experience. But when we look in our Bible, take a look with me in Luke chapter 13. Because it says here, and when the Lord saw her, he had what? He had compassion on her and said unto her, weep not. Compassion. Now, the Greek have different words for compassion, and I don't know all of them. But the many words that they have, some are compassion for a friend, some a compassion for a church member, some even a compassion for something that you admire. But the word that Luke uses for compassion deals with a type of compassion that is wrenching, gut-wrenching inside your soul, gut-wrenching inside your intestines, to the point where it twists your intestines. That's so hard to breathe. This is the type of compassion that our God has on us when we're suffering. It's not a compassion that, oh, it's okay, it's going to be better. It's the type of compassion that it hurts him to see you in pain. That's the type of compassion that Luke is describing. Almost a compassion that a doctor has, a very good doctor, mind you, has on a patient that he is treating. This is what happens that the God we serve, when he feels compassion. But I want to ask you something, class. Have you ever been so hurt and such in pain that you couldn't realize that Jesus was right next to you? So caught up in your classwork that if God was standing right there, you wouldn't notice. I'm just here to tell you that God knows the pain that some of us are feeling. When we look at our checkbook and we look at our bills, and there's more bills than there is in that checkbook, God knows the pains that we face each day. And not only is he ready to be there, but he's ready to do something about it. Now, one of the things I found that was so interesting was the fact that Jesus says to her, weep not. Weep not? I mean, come on, that's a little harsh there, Jesus. I mean, the woman lost her only son. Weep not? But the more I looked at it, the more I understood that he wasn't saying, weep not. And to illustrate my point, I want to share a story with you about Queen Victoria. It says once during her reign that she heard that one of her laborer's wife had lost a child. And a woman who has experienced sorrow herself, she invited this woman and to spend time with her. And the two spent time together. After the woman had her visitation with Queen Victoria, her friends asked, in particular a neighbor asked, so what did the queen say? The neighbor replied, the woman replied, nothing. We just wept together. That's the kind of Jesus that we have. When he was saying to her, weep not, he wasn't saying, stop crying in a negative way, but he was saying, you don't have to cry anymore. It's going to be all right. I don't know about you, but I've had experiences in my life where I needed Jesus to let me know it was going to be all right. I've buried friends, close friends, and sometimes you can't cry outwardly because the pain is so deep, it's so intense. But I can hear Jesus in the background saying, weep not, don't cry. It's going to be all right. But one of the things that I found so fascinating, in addition to the first two, was the fact that Jesus conquers. Now, what I mean he conquers is that he just doesn't conquer pain, but he eradicates it. He removes it. Now, how do I know this? Take a look with me in our Bibles to verse 14. And it says, "And he came and touched the bier, and they that bare him stood still. And he said, Young man, I say unto thee, arise." Picture this atmosphere of this funeral. The pallbearers with their minds intent on burying this body. And all of a sudden they feel on the stretcher. Because Jesus has stopped the funeral. And if you know anything about Jesus, when he stops a funeral, he stops a funeral. He could no longer take seeing this pain that this woman was in. And now he says to the young man, arise, get up. And he gives them back to this mother. But you see, you just can't stop there at this story. Because I'm thinking about plans that I had for my life that I had to bury. Maybe some of you had plans and ideas that you had to bury. And too many times we're ready to bury them in the coffin. Too many times we're ready to take them out to the stretcher. And God is saying, wait a minute. Your idea for ministry is good. Let me get a shot at it. The love of your life. Maybe this person is not the wrong person for you. Let me have a shot at it. Maybe you're saying the place that you don't want to go. Maybe you should go there. Let me get a crack at it. See, when Jesus conquers, he conquers. When he resurrects, he resurrects. Because he is the resurrection and the life. That's what my God is. Too many times we're ready to just pitch it because the board says no, you can't do that. But God says, I can give life. Let me get a shot at it. Let me make it arise. Sometimes we go through life, and because it doesn't go the way we expect it, not only do we bury it, but we've left it for dead. And God is saying, it's time to raise it up. It's time to get up. I'm reminded of a song that the children sing. It says simply this: give them all, give them all. Give them all to Jesus. Shattered dreams, wounded hearts, and broken toys. Give them all. Give them all. Give them all to Jesus. And he will turn your sorrow into joy. Maybe your dreams are on a stretcher right now. Maybe just like the widow, you're waiting for God to return them, to resurrect them. Not for your glory, but for his glory. Because in this dark world, people need to know that God can raise up anything. They need to know that God is not in the business of just burying the dead, but he's in the business of lifting them up. And so I ask you this, one simple thing. When was the last time you let God into your funeral? When was the last time you let God into your funeral? Because if he gets into your funeral, he will turn it upside down, and you will have no more pain.